There we go. All right. So as I said, a little bit of housekeeping to kind of start things off. Please keep your microphone muted when you're not speaking. It can cause a bit of feedback on our end, and sometimes it can be a bit distracting for others. We do have chat turned on right now, though, and I see you guys already jumping in there, which is perfect. Please feel free to use it throughout the program. We ask you keep it on topic, but I'm not super worried about that. If you have questions as we go, Diane's going to be monitoring that for me, and I'm hopeful that I can kind of answer them as I go. I promised her I'd try and take a breath or two in there so she has a chance to chime in and be like, Kelsey, people have questions. But we're also going to have lots of time at the end for discussion and more questions. So if we don't catch you at the beginning, then you should be able to at the end. And while I definitely don't think this is going to be an issue at all, I do have to say, we ask that you follow our rules of conduct, even though we're not in the library. We're kind of in a virtual version of the library. So if you're not sure what those are, you're welcome to visit our full rules on our website. But if we do have any huge issues, we may have to remove you from the program. As I said, I don't expect that to happen at all. So, all right. Let's see. So to kick things off, we know you guys are kind of coming into this from a variety of different places. Some of you guys maybe have been homeschooling for a while. Some of you might be brand new to it. Others are maybe looking to be doing digital school or some version of your school's program, but from home, and may be looking for some additional support. So before we kind of get started, I'd love to hear kind of where people are coming from and where you're at with that. So I'm going to go ahead and get a poll started in just a moment here. Okay, so you guys should be seeing the poll, and it's just kind of asking what type of schooling you'll be doing with your child this year. So if it's your first year homeschooling, that's that first option. If you've been doing homeschooling before this, if you're doing some kind of digital learning through public or private, or maybe some version of in-person. If you're doing some other type of schooling, I'd love to hear that as well. Feel free to add that and then throw it into the chat. But it's looking like most people are looking at kind of digital schooling and are looking maybe just for some additional things for home. But we do have a couple people who are looking to kick off homeschool for the first year. So that's really interesting. Awesome. We'll wait 2 more seconds. It looks like most people. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to end the poll because I think we've caught just about everybody except for Diane and I, which is great.
Kelsey, in the chat, somebody did say they had a 2nd grade son and a kindergartner daughter. So.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, if anybody wants to share what age their students are, if you feel comfortable doing that, you certainly don't have to, but that can definitely be helpful. Sometimes we're hoping to share some information that applies to everybody and some that might be more focused for certain age ranges. But yeah. So as you can kind of see in the poll, we're looking at a lot of digital school and a couple of people kicking off some homeschool for the first year. And we've got one other individual doing something a little bit different, but hopefully we'll have something that can be helpful for everybody. But if not, that's a huge part of why we're doing the discussion at the end, is we'd really like to find out if there are other things that you might be seeking.
So Kelsey, also we have a lot of 1st and 5th graders and some mostly elementary people. Okay. Somebody is also starting distance learning and thinking about switching to homeschooling.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you guys for sharing, and I'm really interested to hear that. It sounds like, yeah, we've got a lot of elementary and a couple of, upper elementary and middle school. Yeah. So I'll give you a heads up. There is a bit of information in here about high school specifically, just because we weren't sure who was going to participate, but it's also good to know a little bit down the road as well. But we do have a fair bit in here that applies towards that elementary and early middle school group. So, all right, we're going to jump right in. We're going to jump right in with what is probably the most obvious quote you will ever see in your life. I apologize for this, but it jumped out at me because of the bigger context, and it was really just that everybody's having a different pandemic. It seems so very obvious, but so very true. And really it was reflective of what we're hearing from a lot of different people, both teachers and parents and honestly kids. And this came from Dr. Justin Reich, who's an assistant professor at MIT and actually the director of the MIT Teaching Systems Lab. And he said this, but it was part of a much, much bigger part that wouldn't have fit on this slide at all. But it was really highlighting how everybody is experiencing both advantages and disadvantages of home learning, but that nobody is experiencing the exact same advantages and disadvantages. And that makes it so very difficult for us to figure out how to serve people because there isn't a one size fits all approach. You guys might even be experiencing within your same family that one of your kiddos is succeeding in certain ways that the other one is just like, I can't do it. And then vice versa with other things. So how does kind of the library fit in here? Well, I'll admit and be really upfront, we're not a school. However, one of the hallmarks of public libraries is trying to connect people with resources and with services, materials, things that they can use to thrive, no matter where they're at or how they're approaching things. And so sometimes that's information, other times it's programming or special services. And sometimes we just don't have a single answer at this point. So we kind of start from the ground up. So we're hopeful that tonight we can go over a little bit that might help you understand a little bit better about what the library might have to help support you, but also try to understand a bit more about where you're coming from. So if there are services or things that we need to start offering or start developing, that we find that out. So for the agenda tonight, instead of continuing to ramble on housekeeping stuff, we're going to spend about half our time, as I said, listening to me talk a bit more, talking about FVRLibraries resources. So that might be eResources or virtual programs, or maybe some new or old services that would be really useful to you right now. But then we're always seeking ways really to best serve our communities. So in order to do that, we really want to know what your concerns and your questions and your requests are. And so we'll spend the second half of this program going over all of that, hopefully in a much more back and forth manner. It won't be quite you listening to me talk at you. And then we'll go ahead and wrap up with a few more housekeeping and survey pieces at the end, just because you gotta. And as I mentioned throughout, if you have questions and want to throw them in there, Diane will be keeping an eye on that. And then once we get to the end, there'll be time for a lot more back and forth kind of questions. Right. So we're going to kind of kick things off with eResources. And we're going to do one more short poll. It's the last poll of the night, I promise, because I know that some of you guys are regular library users. But we also know that things maybe change and your needs change and what you use might, you know, kind of adapt with that. So give me one moment. I'm going to try and get my, there they are. My controls keep disappearing. I'm going to try and get my next poll up. And it's going to be kind of about what type of e-resources you find yourself or your family using. So these might be things that you use pretty regularly, things that you at least feel comfortable with, but you don't use all the time. These don't necessarily have to be things that you feel like you're super expert in. And you're welcome to select as many as apply. And so these might be things like ebooks and e-audiobooks through Overdrive, which is kind of our most popular, ebooks and e-audiobooks through a different service that we have, streaming video or music services, so things like Hoopla or Canopy, library databases. You can't, it looks like on my side it cut it off, but it was like ProQuest and Gale in Context, or the FVRLibraries app. Awesome, so you guys are on top of things. I'm gonna share this, and it looks like just about everybody uses ebooks through Overdrive and Libby, which isn't a surprise. That's definitely our most popular, and Overdrive has been around for a while, so I'm not surprised to see that. We're gonna touch on it a little bit just because there may be a few tips or tricks that you don't know about that might make it a little bit more useful for you. But for those of you guys who aren't using any of our other e-resources or ebook services, we're gonna touch on those as well. Although it looks like about half of you are familiar with those too. And then it looks like we've got just a few people each who use the databases, the app, and the streaming video and music services. So awesome. Thank you guys for sharing. One sec here. Okay. So we're going to kick things off with a really vibrant yellow page. I apologize now that it's getting darker in the evening. I realize how very bright that is, but part of our e-resources that we do, we've actually created an entire page just for students, and it is our Connect FVRL webpage. And a lot of our e-resources that we've really found to be the best for kids, we've gone ahead and smushed, I should say, or comfortably organized onto this page. And so this is kind of our hub for those student resources. It's not everything we have, I'll admit, and there are some really, really good ones we have that aren't on here, mostly because they tend to cater themselves either to a very specific audience that every once in a while touches on students but isn't their primary target, or because we just thought might be a little bit more confusing than helpful to the normal, average student body. However, what you will find on here is links to ebooks, a bunch of our library databases, and some great home learning resources. And so depending on where you guys are throughout the library district, you may have a kiddo who goes to a school that actually is part of our official Connect FVRL program. And we're not going to spend a ton of time talking about that, just in case we have people who aren't part of that yet. But what that is a partnership currently with 8 school districts, although we're trying to expand it out, but to provide e-cards to students automatically. And so this website was set up with those kids in mind. However, the nice thing is everything on here is really accessible and available to every single student we have. And when we set it up with them in mind. So students can actually select their grade level as well as the subject that they're looking for, and it will help cater those resources. So instead of getting a full list of 100 databases, they're only going to get ones that are really good for second graders wanting to do science, which is only about 3 or 4. So it's much more manageable. So what exactly do we have on this page? That was what we're going to talk about to start with. So one of the main things we have on here is library databases. I know that only 1 or 2 of you mentioned that that was something you're comfortable with, but it is something we really like to feature because they're full of amazing content. And it's amazing content that people usually have to pay a lot of money for. And in fact, the library is paying for to give you free access with your library card. And so what's on this page is a pre-selected, sortable list of some of our favorite databases for students. If you're not familiar with a database, it's basically just a really fancy way of saying that it's a searchable selection of reliable resources. So rather than having to go and do a general Google search and sifting through, a million results, these resources are going to be current, they're going to be correct, credible, and hopefully a lot easier to navigate, manage, save, and all of that than you might be with a Google search. We certainly acknowledge there's tons of great information out there, and sometimes the best resource is, a great website. But the really nice thing about library databases is it can be a really nice, simple way to get started. The other reason we highlight it is because, one second, my windows are failing me. Oh no. It's jumped ahead, forgive me, is that sometimes there are some misleading sources out there. So this one is one of my favorites to share, mostly because it's purely for fun. But if you do not know about the Pacific Northwest tree octopus hoax yet, I definitely encourage you to go and look it up when we're done. But this is a Google result, and this is something that comes up, and it's not always obvious that it's incorrect. So in this case, this website includes oodles and oodles of information about this Pacific Northwest tree octopus, how to donate to its rescue causes. It's got photoshopped historical pictures and magazines and all of that. It's even a .org website. So it's seemingly correct until you do a lot of clicking and you find out that it's put together by a company that kind of bills itself as your conspiracy or your source for conspiracy and diversions. So again, this particular example isn't setting out to do anything other than just kind of pull your leg, but there are a lot out there that aren't quite that obvious. And that can be really hard for kids to discern, especially when they're first starting to look for information on their own. And that's the nice thing about the library databases is we don't have hoaxes like that hiding within any of the databases. Most of them are put together by textbook publishers, by really credible authors and reviewers, and we know where that information is coming from. Let's see. Another reason is just because it's so much easier to sort through. Students are being asked a lot more to really work with their sources. So to cite them and to save them and to know where they come from, which is great. We want people to know where their information comes from, and that can be a little bit tricky, but with a lot of our databases, they have these really common features. So this one on the screen is daily life through history as our example, and they're all laid out a little bit differently, but a lot of them feature these exact same things. So they feature things like saving and citing and printing. Some of them even have the option to save directly into a Google Classroom, which a ton of our schools use. So that feature is really fantastic. And there's even a listen option for kids that are maybe have pulled up some information that's a bit above their reading level, or they're wanting to listen and read along at the same time. They're all fully searchable as well. So if you're in a great history resource, you can go ahead and search for something really specific. But if you've got kids that really just want to browse and kind of look through stuff, they're also really developed with students in mind. So it can help them drill down on their topic and narrow down what they're looking for. So those are, again, just some of the kind of reasons why we like to talk about those. If you haven't given a database a try, we really encourage you to, especially with your students. It can be great with specific assignments, but if you've got a kiddo who has found a topic they're interested in, it can be a great way to just really nurture and encourage that. Especially with digital learning, it's hard to keep kids engaged, and when they find a topic they love, it can be just great to go dig through for everything. Yeah, Diane.
Kelsey, somebody was asking if there's a list of books or physical materials that the library owns that you can check out, or is this for electronic sources only?
So this first part is for electronic sources, yes. We are going to talk a bit about the end about how to do some digging in the catalog for physical items that you'd be able to pick up through Curbside. But at the beginning, this is primarily going to be just eResources. And so that's what these databases are. It's not necessarily, pardon me, I understand databases, think of it as a list, but it's basically, if you think of it, almost like a virtual version of encyclopedia or a virtual version of a biography set. I see there maybe is one other question, but I can't quite read what it is.
Somebody was asking if they cite the sources and that they can check for further cite sources that we can then check out for further research.
Yeah, so many of our databases, all of them include a citation for that specific source, but a lot of them will include where the information came from beyond that, as well as some additional resources you can dig into as well. So a lot of them might have some great suggested websites for additional information. Some of them will actually include magazine or books to do some more digging. So yes, absolutely. Most all of these include some additional, so you learned a little bit about ancient Egypt, but you want to know a little bit more. We suggest you go here. And some of them don't give you in this case, the Daily Life Through History really looks at an article, but we're going to look at another one a bit later that it doesn't just give you an article, it gives you a whole variety of things. So you still have the ability to dig through a few different sources and really select your information, but it helps kind of cater it and gather it for you in one spot. And actually, on that note, we're going to look at just a couple of my favorites. I'm not going to spend all night doing it, but a few of our favorites, some because they just contain really cool stuff that you might not know about, others because they do a really good job or a unique job of kind of organizing the stuff. And again, just kind of encouraging. We know right now if kids aren't at school, they have a bit less access to those resources they would have when they were in school. Some of our schools are having open library hours, which is amazing and fantastic. And we do have curbside pickup for items, but students don't necessarily have the ability to go dig through their teacher's classroom or just wander through the nonfiction section when they're looking for information. So that's part of the reason we wanted to highlight these as options that people don't always know about, or at least know what all they encompass. So one of the ones I like to start with, mostly because I'm a huge map and like world geek person, but is Culturegrams. And Culturegrams is amazing for elementary students. So given that we've got a whole bunch of elementary kiddos, parents in here, I'm happy to see that. This one is one that actually contains information on countries and states and many of the provinces of Canada. And what's really nice is there's a version that's specifically for elementary students that's going to be a little bit simpler and a little bit more honed in. But then there's a slightly broader version that's aimed at middle and high school students to use independently or to use with elementary students with some guidance from parents or teachers. And so it includes so much information about every place that you could possibly imagine. If you've got somebody working on a state or a country report, or again, who's just super interested in things, this would be a fantastic one. What's also amazing is it includes recipes. Excuse me, recipes. My computer is just, I think it's going to jump ahead on us, but it includes recipes. It also includes some interviews with people. I apologize. And so it has some of those interviews include people with locals who lived there. So sometimes kids in this case. On the screen, we've got kids, but also adults and different ones. So it's a really great idea if you've got somebody who's interested in certain areas. Along that kind of same vein as the National Geographic database. This one's incredibly simple. It pretty much has just one or two things, but it's really one of those things people look at and go, ooh, I had no idea, because it has full scans of the National Geographic magazines going back to the very first one. So if you want to look at what the first National Geographic looked like in 1888, pardon me, you can do that. You can see what the ads looked like, what the pictures looked like, how it was laid out. It's really amazing. And that goes all the way through the most current one. It also does that for the kids as well. And so you'll have to forgive me. My computer is just being so slow today. But the kids one has full scans, there we go, of the current Nat Geo magazines, as well as a lot of the nonfiction books. So you can actually basically read, again, an ebook straight on, you know, in this case, about entomologists or this or that. And so it just all is really fantastic. And it's not just a text version. You get to see what it actually looked like in the book. So the next one, again, is a great elementary age one. This one is called Power Knowledge. And this is one that's all about science, which I know for some parents can be a really big struggle. Science is one of those topics that the teachers have resources, they have training, they have lesson plans that a lot of our parents just don't have on hand. Or being able to support a kiddo who's maybe watching a science video but wants to, you know, explore and do something a little bit more with it offline. And so Power Knowledge is a fantastic one to start with. It's actually 3 databases, and they are meant to be used by kids. So it's actually written and designed for that kind of 2nd to 6th grade audience. And they've got one on life science, one on physical science, and one on earth and space science. And so it's got more than just articles, it's also got videos and pictures and even some science experiments. And for adults, you might be really interested to know that the experiments include explanations, guiding questions to ask your kiddos as they work on it, as well as a lot of information about how to use that. Let's see. It also has, it's going to pop up in just a second, some games to help kind of test the knowledge of the kids. So if they're wanting to do a little bit of fun with their topic, they can go ahead and play a game on it as well. For older kiddos, so if you do have some kids, I see there's 1 or 2 in here that are in middle school, or if you've got any that you know that are a bit older, Science Online is a great one to try as well. What's really fantastic is those of you that might be doing homeschooling directly, it actually includes full e-learning modules. So it's not just a learn about atoms, it actually walks kids through in the way they would learn them in a classroom or in a textbook. And oftentimes the information comes directly from high school or middle school science textbooks. And it includes diagrams and oftentimes, again, some additional reading or learning materials. What I really like in this one though, and this one could even be fun for younger kids if they had some kind of support and guidance, is they have fully interactive online virtual science experiments. So you actually don't have to set up anything. You don't have to have supplies. You don't have to demolish your kitchen to kind of test the density of liquids or the science about the genetics of a vegetable. You get to actually like virtually plant dirt or try things out that way, which is kind of fun. And last but not least, our final one is kind of a cheat. This is one I was going to show you that doesn't just do specific single articles. It's going to gather some information for you, but these are our Gale and context databases. And these, we actually have 8 of them, and each one is sorted by a different topic. So there's one that's specifically for middle school. And so it's actually just called Gale and context middle school. But then there's a bunch of other ones that are history or biography or science. And they really focus on that subject so as not to overwhelm kids with just so very, very much in there. However, they do contain just a wealth of great information. As you can see from these, what's really nice, however, is that once you learn what one is like and how to navigate it, they all look exactly the same, which is amazing for students and that confidence building and how to use something. And so these, in addition to just giving you straight information, actually collect resources. So things like reference books, magazines, newspapers, even academic journals into one place. And so on this screen, you can actually see that it does give you some background information, but then if you look a little bit lower, it's going to give you links to 30 some reference articles or a whole bunch of primary sources, which are those immediate firsthand accounts of a topic that can be really valuable in understanding something. And then they also mark most of their results by reading level, which can be really helpful as you're trying to look into something that might work for each of your different students.
Kelsey?
Yeah.
Somebody was wondering if you could talk about the 8 topics of the databases.
Yeah.
Of this database.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so Gale in Context in particular has just broken it out into different topics. So they do have middle school. They also have science, US history and world history are 2 separate databases actually. They have one that's really unique called Opposing Viewpoints that actually gives you kind of controversial topics and then presents arguments on both sides of it. There's one for environmental science and another one for biographies. And I think I'm missing one, but I can't remember. I think it might be literary sources, so a reading-based one. And that's specific to Gale, but on our website, we've broken things into actually very similar ones. So things like history, science, reading, writing, and then there's other databases. These are by no means all of them, just a couple of the ones that are really interesting. I do want to point out, and I don't know if I mentioned it before, we have a handout, and I'm not sure if you're able to see it. It was one of the first things that was posted, but if you weren't in the room yet, you may not have seen it. It's going to provide a link to some of the information we're talking about, and within that document is actually a link to a eResources handout. That's a great one to get started with. It'll have several of these on it, but it's going to have other things that are really catered to your kids by their age and by the topic that they're wanting. So if you've got, you know, a 2nd grader who is doing, I can't even think off the top of my reading, it might suggest something that's going to be different than a 10th grader doing that same thing. Let's see. Can the document, pardon me, get emailed? Yes, I will be emailing it at the end to everybody who registered. So I will definitely be emailing that as well. Thank you. All right. I'm going to jump into, I think, our final database before we kind of move out of this, before our eyes all glaze over with databases. And this last one is a little bit different. It's not going to be one that your students or your kiddos are going to be looking for specifically for learning about a specific topic, but it is one that might be really useful to you guys as parents. It is our Learning Express library. And so this one is going to have oodles and oodles of lesson-based information and things that are set up to actually help kids just get through assignments and tests and that kind of thing. And so this has tests and tutorials for elementary, actually into adults. There are things in there that would be useful for adults as well. One thing to know about this is it does require you to set up an account, and that's mostly because it helps track your progress. So if you've got a 3rd grader who's maybe doing some really basic, you know, math on there, they can start with assignment 1 and keep working through the other assignments, and it's going to track where they are without them having to set up something new every time. And so there are, again, support on certain subjects within the school center. It has full lessons and some practice assignments, and they're sorted by age and by topic. When you click into that school center, it can look like there's not a lot, but once you click on one of the topics or the ages, it just explodes. There's tons in there. For those of you, again, I know there aren't many, but if you know anybody who's wanting to study for any of their SATs or ACTs or even the AP tests, it has some amazing services in there for that as well. All right, so this is gonna take just a second because my computer's being slow tonight, but we're gonna jump from here into ebooks. But before we do, if anybody has any other questions, I would be happy to answer. No? All right. So we're going to chat about ebooks then for a second. So a lot of you guys were familiar with Overdrive, which is great. We're not going to spend a ton of time talking about it, but I will highlight one or two of the special features that can kind of make it a little bit easier for you. And then we're going to maybe showcase a couple that you weren't aware of. Hopefully that will be helpful. So for those of you guys who've used Overdrive, it is really nice to know that the main page is kind of like your best friend. If you haven't figured that out, you probably have if you're Power Overdrive users. We have main pages for kind of the general main page, but also kids and teens specifically. And what's great is that everything on the main page is always available. We don't put things on that main page that require a hold. Overdrive kind of works just like any physical books in our library, in that we only have a certain amount of people who can be reading it at one time, but those books on the front page are kind of like gold then, because they're right then and there. If you make it beyond the main page, however, there are some features that you may like to know about. So let's see. There we go. So on that search page, so if you searched for something, or if you just clicked on one of those topics, along the left-hand side, there is oodles and oodles of what we call limiters. So things that help you kind of narrow down what you're looking at and can be really helpful. I bet a lot of you guys have used the, always available, or the things that are available now, but you may also be interested to know that there are other things on there. So things like subject or interest level, reading level, the format if you want to switch between ebooks and e-audiobooks, and that can be really helpful. Sometimes though, I like to just start by narrowing things down. And so if you didn't know about the advanced search, this is something you need to know about. It can be life-changing. So when you kind of hover over that little magnifying glass, you get this option to do an advanced search. And if you click on it, you get a screen that looks like this. It's not pretty, but it is amazing. And it can be really great if you're trying to do kind of like the virtual equivalent of browsing. So maybe you don't have a specific book you're looking for. You're not looking for the newest like dinosaur mystery book, but you are looking for a book that might be good for a third grader that's available right now that maybe won an award. And so you can actually put that kind of information in here and it'll search and show you what's available. So you can actually narrow it down by both reading level and interest level. It has a variety of awards in there, subjects, all sorts of things. And so it kind of pre-runs that for you. And last but certainly not least, I'm sure that many of you guys know that you can adjust what things look like once you actually check them out and want to read them. But I'm not sure if you all knew that there is an option in here to adjust everything from lighting, because sometimes whether things are too bright or too dull can affect students' reading. You can bring the margins in, which can be really helpful for a student who's just learning to read or who's maybe struggling with reading, because tracking words fully across the screen can be quite difficult. And there's even an option to try the Open Dyslexic font, which can be very, very helpful for some students with dyslexia, not all, but it can even be helpful for students who are just having a hard time with those different fonts like Arial or Times New Roman.
Kelsey,
yeah,
can you show them how to get to the reader settings? Is that in there, or is that something you'll be covering?
It is not something that I have in here just yet, and it does kind of vary depending on where your what you're viewing it on. So pardon me, if you're viewing it on a device versus a computer screen, it's going to be a little bit different. So let's see, are you able to see my cursor on here? No, maybe not. So on this one, for example, what I did was actually clicked straight in the middle of the screen, or in the middle of the page, and it gives you some options on the side. And one of them has a little A on it. And if you click on that, you get some of those options to go ahead and adjust the text scale, that lighting, and the readability. And then on an iPad, is that what I'm seeing? Yeah. On an iPad, it's going to be very similar. If you tap in the middle of the screen, you're going to get options on both the top and the bottom. And one of them should be a big A and a little a. And then when you click on that, that's where you get those options to change them. And one thing that's even worth knowing is where it says this include accessibility sizes. If you've got a student who maybe has some vision issues and needs things even bigger, if you click on that, it gives you the option to make that text even bigger than the biggest setting. So the biggest setting is like medium big, and then once you click onto that accessibility, it makes it really big, which can again be helpful for students that are just learning because it reduces how many words are on the screen, or for students who struggle with vision. Let's see here, one moment. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and switch over to another service. So we have some other services besides Overdrive, and they're called, well, there's a variety of them, but what they are is they're called Simultaneous Use, which is a super fancy way of just saying that there's no limit on how many people can use them. You could have an entire class reading things at one time, or you and your cousins and your best friends could all be reading the same book for a book club. They're really fantastic, and not everybody knows about them. They do have some downsides. They may not have quite as much availability on titles, and they usually are just streaming. They're not ones you can download onto a device, but they still work on an iPad. They still work on a computer. And sometimes they have some special features that Overdrive doesn't have. So in addition to just being able to read as many people as you like at one time, they might have some things that are just new, which can be really nice. So one is called Tumble Books. And this one is full of amazing, high quality picture books, beginning readers, and nonfiction, and it's aimed at preschool and early elementary students. And this one, I will tell you, is not on our Connect FVRL page. However, if you click right in about the same place you would find that, so under kids and teens, we have an early learning section that this is tucked into. That's for a variety of reasons that I won't get into now, but it's a great, great service. And what I really love is you can actually stream it on just about any device, but it also has read-alongs. So you can have somebody actually reading the book, and it highlights the words. So for your, kindergarten and first and second graders that are still learning to read or really building their confidence in reading, it's gonna be a great tool for them. If you're looking for kind of Tumble Books' big brother or big sister, which will pop up on the screen in just a second, it is called the Teen Book Cloud. And there it is. And this one is going to be aimed at kind of those middle to high school students. And it is full of graphic novels, ebooks. It even has a section for AP English class in it. And again, these are all available to everybody all the time. No checking them out. The really thing I like to feature in this one is the high-low titles. It has an entire selection of about 50 of these titles that are really designed for teens specifically, but they're written at a slightly lower reading level, which can be great if you know of any teens. That doesn't sound like many of you guys have them, but if you know of them that maybe are still kind of building their confidence with reading, or maybe reluctant readers, it's hard to get them to read a whole book, because oftentimes these are a bit shorter, and it helps them build that skill without resigning them to reading books for little kids. And kind of the last thing on that page is a link to our home learning resources. And these are a little different than everything we've talked about today. And these are things that we're able to edit and adjust as we go. So based on probably even feedback we get tonight, I'll probably adjust them tomorrow when I get back to work. These are based around our frequently asked questions. And are actually a feature on our website where we've pulled some of the really best things from around the web. So they're not necessarily library resources. They're just some really fun ones. So maybe like the TEDx videos or the Metropolitan Kids information, or for those of you who have got kids that desperately need to get some energy out, Go Noodle. And we have kind of broken them into different areas that might be really useful, such as science resources or physical activity resources, and we update them as we go. These also have links to all of our school districts' COVID response pages. So if you have a hard time kind of finding that, we try and keep it updated as they move around each school district's page. All right, so we are going to, one second here. We're going to go ahead and move into our services and programs section. And this will be kind of our final section, and then we'll go ahead and chat for the last bit. So while we're still not able to open our doors, we desperately want to, and we're looking forward to when we can. There's a lot of things we can do to help you guys while you're at home. And we've talked a lot about e-resources up till this point, but a good chunk of this is going to be physical things as well. So hopefully that will be helpful. I'm sure most of you guys have done curbside pickup or at least are aware of it, so I'm not going to spend a ton of time talking about it. But if you haven't, we encourage you to give it a try. You're able to put just about anything we would normally check out on hold, so books, DVDs, music. For kids, we've even got our Grow Reader bags on hold, and you can go ahead and then just pick them up at your library. Most of them you don't even need an appointment, although for our bigger locations you do, and they've gotten really good about getting people in pretty quickly. We're working on upping our hold limit. I do know that's one thing that people are really seeking is an increased amount of holds, and hopefully by next month we'll be able to do that. But right now, every person in your family can have 10 items on hold. So if you've got a big family, you could definitely use that to your full advantage. I do know, though, that one of the things people are missing is kind of browsing the shelf, and we're not back to that yet. But there are some tricks to using the catalog that might be helpful as you're kind of having to use it for browsing instead of just searching, which is what people have done up to this point. Oh, let's see. I think, is there, can my children open up their own library card to check out physical books versus just an e-card? So for children, we do require parents to go ahead and sign off on a card. Right now, we are doing e-cards for everybody who is able to get them online if you don't already have an account. I don't know, I do believe they're still requiring parents to sign for things. They might be or mailing applications to kids who are under 18 when they sign up for an e-card if they want to go ahead and get physical items. So most often when people go ahead and use the catalog, they're searching for something specific. You might be looking for like the latest James Patterson or, you know, a specific title. But there are some kind of browsing things that might make it helpful if you're just wanting to find some things or if you're looking for some specific types of resources. One thing that you will see is just like in Overdrive, when you run a search, you do have some options on the side to narrow it down, which can be super helpful. In this case, I ran a search for pigs, because I knew intentionally it would give me a ton of results, most of which wouldn't be useful. Because you can see I got everything from guinea pigs to actual pigs and an animated film just for fun. And so narrowing that down from like 53 pages to a manageable number can be a little bit tricky if you don't use those pieces on the side. But the nice thing is, just like Overdrive, you can go ahead and select availability, your audience, material type, even an e-format if you did want one. It does search our e-catalog as well. Let's see. One thing that I like to highlight if people don't use it, and again, it will pop up in a moment, is the subject section. So if you keep scrolling, you find even more. And subject can be amazing when you're doing a super broad search. So like I mentioned, pigs is just crazy broad, too much in there. And even if I select some of those, I might still have too many. But subjects are what we use when we're cataloging. So when we're bringing in books to help us kind of find other books that are like them. And so if I were looking for a book like Babe or other books that are maybe like a pig story, I might go ahead and use the section or the subject juvenile fiction, which narrows it down from like 53 pages to just 113. And that can be really, really helpful. Sometimes that list doesn't quite give you what you're looking for, or it's not quite doing what you're thinking. And so another way you can actually use it is to find a book that you really like. So in this case, I ran a much more relevant search to what we're doing tonight for homeschool. And scrolled through, and I only found about 49 results. So I'm like, that doesn't quite seem right. When I run that general search, it searches through everything. So title and description and all of that, but it still doesn't quite always catch what I'm looking for. But I did find one title that was really good and seemed kind of what I was into. And so once you do that, you can actually look at the subjects that that specific book uses. And the cool thing is they're all links. So if you find one book you like, click on the links in the subjects, and it's going to give you a whole list of other books that use that same subject, some of which can be really, really helpful. So in that handout I told you guys about, I'm actually going to include a few links that are great for homeschooling within that. And so if you click on them, it'll take you straight out to some of these. But again, if you find something in that list that's really good, I encourage you to dig in, because sometimes we're human. So sometimes multiple people will use slightly different subject terms for a similar thing. And so clicking around and doing some digging can be really good. All right, there we go. And when all that fails you, when you've done all those tips, all those tricks, all that browsing, we're still here and we're still available for one-on-one help if you need it. So if you're just not finding what you're looking for, feel free to reach out. Got a few different ways. So one of those is, or actually two of them, I should say, are our library samplers and our personalized reading suggestions. So Library Sampler is a great new service that we set up that basically has us doing all the legwork for you. You don't have to dig through anything. You can go ahead and just send us a request, and I'll have a link to that in the handout as well that says, you know what, I need 10 picture books for a kindergartner, or I need, you know, some books for a fourth grader who's learning about science. And if you can, if it's about planets, that'd be great because that's what he's doing. And we're going to first look on the shelves of your branch so that we can get you that stuff as quick as possible. But if we don't find what you're looking for, or we think there might be some more, we are also happy to place books on hold and let you know it might be a little bit of a wait. If you'd like some suggestions for reading though, and you're not quite blindly ready to trust us, I totally understand it. You can put in a request. Again, there's a link for that that says, you know, I like things a little bit more different, and I would like to dig a little bit more into characters or why I liked a book. And again, we'll do the same thing. We'll dig through, we'll send you a list of things to look at, to maybe consider. You'll still put the books on hold, so it requires a little bit more work from you, but we do all the hard work of finding the possible titles for you. Let's see. And when in doubt, you can always ask a librarian. So there's a bright green button just about every single page in our website that says contact us. That's why it's at the top there, and it takes you to this page. It does have some frequently asked questions to help you if you know you're wondering why your Kindle isn't downloading properly. However, there are some spots on here where you can actually send us and get one-on-one virtual help. You know, it's back and forth, so it might, you know, it's email, it might not come in that exact same day. But if you're needing to find out, you know, about the dietary needs of a three-toed sloth because you have a very curious 7-year-old at home, or maybe you're just really wanting some guidance on specific databases, you know, you can go ahead and send us a question or a comment through here. You can get more, you know, one-on-one tech help, and we're really happy to help you with that. And it doesn't limit it just to library resources. We're a pretty curious bunch, so if we don't find it in the stuff that we have, we will keep digging till we find you the information we're seeking for. So I think I see one more question.
Yeah, somebody was asking, what is the limit of items you can check out during, I think they mean cover, it says they, COVID.
Yeah.
It used to be 50. How many can you check out and have a hold at once now?
Yes, so I know that you can have 10 items on hold at this time, and that the amount, you're correct, the amount that is available to be checked out at one time has gone up and down. And I'll admit, I don't know what the current number is. Diane, do you know what it is?
It is still currently 50.
50, okay.
The hold limit is 10, but I know that they have talked recently about maybe raising that again as people get used to curbside, but that, I don't think it's happened yet.
Yeah, so we haven't been able to raise the hold limit, but I do know that, yeah, I think the goal is in the next month to be able to do that. But thank you for clarifying on the 50 items. I wasn't quite sure on that one myself. All right, so our final section is just gonna be a super, oh yeah, pardon me.
Oh, I was just also gonna say, if they're homeschooling, they could probably get a teacher's, is that still, that's still available?
Yes, so if you, yes, thank you. If you are homeschooling specifically, so you're going to be running the curriculum yourself, there is an educator card that you're able to sign up for. Right now, that's all being facilitated through our e-card application, and that'll be on the handout I send you. If you're just kind of helping your kiddo with digital learning, we're not setting up educator cards for those just yet. We do know that that is a huge piece, and that there's a lot that goes into that, but it's not something we've quite got a policy for just yet. But if you are one of those first-year homeschoolers, I know there were a few of you, that is definitely an option, and so that would give you another account specifically for your homeschool resources.
Somebody's asking if community college teachers can get an educator card, and also that I wanted to let them know that would let you check out 100 items.
Yes, yeah. The hold limit is currently 10 still, so it would you'd have to build up to 100. And you know what? I don't know that we've had a ton of community college, but I do believe it is. I do believe that you are able to. So as part of the e-card, I believe right now we're having to just put in the notes that it's an educator card, but I believe so. Yeah, I will be happy to confirm with that though, and I will send that out in the email I send. So our very final thing, and we'll go through this pretty quick so we've got some time. I know it took a little longer to get through, so thank you guys for your patience. We do have some virtual programs, even though we're still not able to have you guys in the library, so we can't have those fun performers. We've shifted a ton of our stuff online, and that includes live and recorded programs. Since you guys all made it here tonight, I assume that means you know about it, so yay! But if you didn't know, our conversation circles, several of our book clubs, even a lot of the Master Gardener and Dungeons and Dragons, and some special presenters have all been featured in our online programs, and those you can see on the virtual programs page or the calendar. If joining a program at a specific time is a bit tricky for you, our staff also have put together like dozens of YouTube videos that can be viewed at any time, and these are specifically aimed at youth and teens. And so they feature things like arts and crafts and maker and building challenges. And what we did with these was build them or design them to be really just like 5 to 10-minute videos that you then shut the computer and walk away and do something based on what you've seen. So it might encourage you to make your own character from your favorite book. And so you would watch Rachel from Washougal talk you through that, but then you would walk away from the screen because we know screen overload's a big thing right now. And you might actually do that largely using supplies you already have. Our goal wasn't to do anything where you have to buy any weird, crazy craft supply. We're also working on some activity kits that will come out starting in September and hopefully come out monthly that you'd be able to just pick up at the library and that would already have the supplies gathered for you and would be completely screen-free. So keep your eyes open for those. If you're really wanting to get away from the screen, one way to do that is to get out into nature. And again, it's going to pop up in a second, or it's going to jump right past it. Our Check Out Washington backpacks. If you haven't checked one out already, we encourage you to put it on hold. These nature backpacks usually have a holds list, but we have about 24 of them, so that list moves pretty quickly because people are always bringing them back. And each one has binoculars and a nature guide and state parks maps, and even a Discover Pass that's specifically for libraries that will let you into parks for free. Yeah.
I think go over this again in case people missed it.
Oh, what was that, Diane?
I think you froze for a little bit about the backpacks, so if you could maybe repeat some of it. Sorry.
No, that's okay. Apparently my internet's just not great today. That's something we're all learning about during this time, is how to navigate things. So yeah, the Discover backpacks, if you haven't already, they have a Discover Pass in them that's library, or that's specifically for libraries, so you get into state parks for free. But they also have binoculars and nature guides and a state parks map. And they're really fantastic. And so they usually have a holds list, but we have a lot of them. So that's what I was saying, is the list moves pretty quickly. So we encourage you to give that a try. And that definitely gets you out and away from a screen pretty quickly. Our final option of the night, and then we'll jump out of this in a second, is our Grow a Reader bags. If you haven't ever tried one of these, we encourage you to. It's kind of like a DIY story time in a bag. So we've got a whole bunch of topics from potty training to wild animals, and each bag has 6 books on that topic that are for kids, so picture books. But then it also has a small toy. It usually has some kind of CD or DVD to go with it, and some parent information. And so all you have to do is search for Grow a Reader in our catalog, and you kind of have yourself a nice self-contained set of books all on a topic that, again, just kind of come right to you without you having to do a whole lot of, digging through our catalog. So, all right. So that's kind of the end of this particular portion. As I said, I really appreciate your patience on this. If you have any questions about what we've talked about so far, I'd be happy to take them. Otherwise, we're going to jump into the discussion piece, and we can do questions in there as well. All right, so I don't see any, that's okay. What we're gonna do is, I've got a few questions, and then if, when we get to that, I see one question, so before I do the next question, I'll get to that. But I will put up a couple questions, but if we diverge off of these, that's okay. They're mostly discussion starters. But if you would like to chime in on that, we'd encourage you to go ahead and throw your name in chat, and Diane will call on you, and you should then be able to unmute yourself and ask your question, and we can go back and forth. But let's see. I see. Are there any additional benefits for a teacher card other than upping the checkouts to 100? That's definitely the primary one. Under normal circumstances, it also ups your hold limit. However, right now it's 10 for everybody, regardless of their card type. Some teachers also find it useful because they can kind of separate it from their personal their personal books, so they can know, these are my personal books that are just for me, and these are the books that are for my class. And so that can be really helpful. They do also have a longer checkout time, although that's pretty fluid right now considering, and we don't have fines on any of our items. If you keep something really far past the checkout date, we'll eventually bill you for the item, but as soon as it comes back, that bill goes away, and we don't do overdue fees. So yeah, there are some advantages. Some of them don't really apply right now, though. All right. Oh, thank you, Diane. All right. So my starting question is really just kind of what your biggest concerns and needs are for fall regarding home learning for your family. And so if you have thoughts, or again, if you have questions related to this, we would love to hear it. And then we do have some other questions after this. But if anybody has some thoughts or would like to share on that. Oh, it's quiet. All right, well, maybe I can spur your interest with another one. Oh, I see one pop up in the chat. Finding curriculum for writing. So finding curriculum can be one of those things that's a little tricky, and I'll admit, because there are so many homeschooling curriculums, the library rarely purchases them. However, there are a variety of online ones, and there may also be some other opportunities. So I am going, you'll have to forgive me as I pull up like yet another screen here. I'm going to go ahead and take some notes for this, because that may be an opportunity that we can find some materials for that. Is there any training for parents on the apps being used for local schools? So are you talking about the apps? Do you mind me saying, Sundance, the apps that your schools are specifically using? So things like
Canvas and Zern is what they said.
Oh, thank you. Canvas and Zern. Interesting. I'm not aware of that. I should let you guys all know, if you hear clicking, it's because I'm taking notes on some of these that we can hopefully do some follow-up on that later. For a lot of these, we may not know, but we have a lot of people that we know of. So finding a list of topics. So this is something that probably does exist, and I'll admit it's not on our home learning page, but that's one of those topics that I thought I would definitely pull together. So that is one of the things. I know Common Core is kind of a language that people are not always super fond of, but one of the nice things about it is that it does give some kind of prescribed ideas of what students are likely learning in each portion of their school year as they move through their grades. And so there are going to be some recommendations tied to that, and also to Washington State. And so we could likely find those and link those to our home learning resources. And HD Word. Oh, another one of the apps that's being used. Awesome.
I don't think we currently have anything scheduled for training for parents for Canvas, Zern, or HD Word, but that is something we can definitely look into. I'm not sure. Go ahead.
Well, and some of this, as I said, we're really trying to kind of find what you guys are seeking so that we know how to develop some of our plans for fall. So knowing this will give us some ideas if there are either, handouts we should be developing or working with our local schools to maybe offer some of these things. So I can't guarantee that we'll be able to address all of these, but everything that you give us as far as information is something that, when we're communicating with people, because it comes up quite often, we're able to share that information. And as I said, we're already planning our own programs for later this month and September. Let's see, I think I saw one more pop up.
Somebody was asking if it says books for my 5th grader that is a reluctant reader and not reading at grade level. So
Amanda, I have to say that would be the absolute perfect example. In fact, I wish I could have come up with that for our reading suggestions. That is the kind of thing our team absolutely loves to do, and we would be happy to pull together a list of that. I don't have any off the top of my head. I'll have to apologize on that. But in the handout that I'll send you, and that's in the chat, that reading suggestions form would be the perfect place to dig in there. So our staff usually works with all of our librarians, depending on what the request is. In this case, they often would reach out to youth librarians and be like, what do you guys know? What's the best thing? If you want to do a bit of digging, one thing I didn't highlight here, but what might be really good is a database called Novelist. And we have one that's specifically for kids as well. So it's aimed at like kindergarten through 8th grade. And that's one where you could even go in and say, you know, my 5th grader really enjoyed this book. Could you give me, yeah, it's amazing. Can you give me other books like it? And that can be a really fun one. And it's tied to our catalog. So it's not going to give you recommendations of things we don't have. It's going to give you things that you could actually put on hold and then pick up at your library. But that's another one I would definitely encourage you to take advantage of that reading suggestions. That's the exact kind of thing that they would love to do. Novelist is, yeah. And it should be linked on the Connect FVRL page. It'll be in the reading section. And it'll just ask for your library card. And then you can go ahead and say, you know what, my kiddo really loved A Series of Unfortunate Events. What else you got for me? Or my kid really likes a great female protagonist and a mystery. What titles might be good for me? So that one, and there, like I said, is one of 2 ways. So the Connect FVRL page we talked about, if you click on to reading, I think it's on every single age range. Another thing on our webpage, a lot of people know there's a search bar right up at the top, and it by default searches our catalog, but there's also a little link in there. You can actually tell it to search the site. So if you know exactly what you're looking for, you could just put novelist into that search bar, hit cite, and it should pop right up for you because it's going to search the website for that term. And then you can go ahead and just click straight through it. But I'll make sure and send a link in the email that I follow up with as well, just in case you miss those ones, because I know sometimes it's easy to miss. There's a lot on there. Online art classes. You know, I know a lot of people were offering some versions of those. And we do have a few linked from our home learning page, ones from some of the authors that were offering like illustration. I don't know if there were ones that were offering, or I don't think we have anything currently linked as far as more classical art, unless you're doing like art appreciation, which we have the Met Kids link. We could definitely do some looking for some art classes. Are there anything in particular that you're looking for as far as art? Let's see. All right, I'm gonna let that question pause for a second while I jump into the next one. We were also just kind of wondering, what are some of the biggest barriers, if you feel comfortable sharing, that you've kind of experienced about using the library during the closure? We know there's a lot. The fact that the library just isn't open is a barrier, but are there any other things that have made it a little tricky for you guys to use it, or things that might be helpful to know? I will even extend that out to programming. You guys obviously made it to this program, but are there any things that have been kind of keeping you from programs, or things you might like to see that would be, you know, better in the programming realm? Limited number of holds. Yeah, that's definitely one. And that was based off of just kind of getting things underway when we reopened, but it is definitely something we're working on.
All right, and somebody said that they're new to the area and signed up for my card and then didn't save the card number, can't get it back without my card, which I would say go to Ask a Librarian, and you can request your card number and they will happily confirm your identity for sure and then send you your card number. And then somebody says they really miss browsing for kids books in particular. Just did the sampler and it was a huge hit.
Yay!
Yay! And then somebody said long wait on holds, kids being able to look at books and choose their own, but they're going to try the sampler.
Yeah. And the nice thing is, like you said, with the sampler, they really try and pick books that are on the shelf to start with. So in theory, you know, you shouldn't have to wait to get those things. Every once in a blue moon, if it's a really specific request, they'll have to put things on hold. But
and then somebody's asking how many books in the sampler for kids, and really it is you put in a range. Sorry, Kelsey, I'm answering these for you.
No, thank you, Diane. You've been working on this in person.
So if you wanted 15 books, you could ask for 15, or you could ask between 5 and 10, or you could ask no more than 5. So really, we kind of leave it up to you to set the limit.
Yeah, and I should point out, you know, we're highlighting this in this section, but the sampler is actually for all ages as well. So if you as an adult are missing browsing the shelf and you just want, like, I would really like 5 good mysteries, you could absolutely request that. I think right now, yes, is 20 the most that's in the sampler, Diane?
I wasn't aware that there was a limit because we're checking them out.
We are. One second, I'm pulling it up
I've,
while we
I've
chat.
I've had families that have come in and gotten 2 big bags of samplers. So, yeah, uh, it's really, you can ask, and if they can't pull that many, they'll let you know.
Yeah.
But if you ask for too many, you might end up with books put on hold,
Yeah.
which then that's where the limit would come in a little more.
So it's looking right now the default, and I say default because we have a comment section and we really do try to accommodate wherever possible, is going to be 1 to 10 for all ages. So 10 is kind of where their requested maximum is for adults, and up to 20 for kids. But again, if you throw it into comments, again, we really try and accommodate wherever we can. Yeah. But again, it's per card. So if you had, you know, Susie really wants to do a sampler and Jose really wants to do a sampler, you absolutely could. And those would be 2 separate ones. So we not necessarily are limiting it by household, but I know that can be a bit tricky, especially if you've got kids trying to limit it to 10. Yeah. All right. Awesome. Well, I'm glad we got a chance to talk about Sampler. It's a relatively new thing, but we're very excited about it.
Yeah, it's good to get good feedback on it.
Yeah. All right. So I'm going to kind of loop these last ones together because we've got about 7 minutes left, and I want to respect your time and not hold you here for too long. I appreciate you joining me this evening, though. As I said, you guys are here, so we know you've participated in at least one online program. But if there are others that you've participated in or considered but not joined in, we'd love to, you know, if you have any feedback for us, that would be great. As a heads up, we will be sending a survey at the end, and any information you provide in that is super helpful as well. It's anonymous, so we won't know what you said, and that's okay. You can be brutally honest, but there's also a spot in there to put some suggestions for other things. The final one, and I'm kind of loop it with the programs just to make sure we get a chance, is are there other contact-free, because that's where we're at right now, programs or services that would be really valuable for you to have this fall? So if there are things you've been thinking of and really just going, I need this and I can't find it anywhere, we'd love to hear what it is, just so we can kind of keep that in as we're planning and looking forward to things. Let's see. All right, cool. Reading stories for elementary aged kids with activities. Awesome. Online crafting. So Sundance, you will be happy to know we are about to start, I believe we're going to call it a maker group, but crafting, absolutely. Bring your activity, get together, chat. And I believe it's going to be for all ages. So not just kids or adults, but everybody kind of coming together.
And then, did you see the one about the worksheets?
Yeah, so that is one thing. We do have one linked currently from our home learning resources. It's not part of a library resource, but it links to education.com's weekly boosts. And that one is one that you might give a look, but we can definitely, I'll add it to do a little bit more digging on additional resources. But what's cool about that is it has, I believe, preschool to 6th grade. It has 40 weeks of worksheets on math, reading, and writing. And they're fully printable, and I think each week has 15 to 20 worksheets, and they're scaled for age. So a preschool one is going to be obviously very different than a 6th grade one. And I'll make sure and highlight that in the email that I send out. And reading tutors. All right, I see that. Kids book groups. All right. Yeah, and that curriculum right now, that is a tricky one because we aren't able to do interlibrary loan. And that one, I know Diane threw that in the chat. It's at this point, there aren't very many libraries offering it, so we don't have people to request that stuff from. But there may be some online curriculums we could do some links to that are freely available, and I'll do some digging on that and see if we might be able to add that. I know it's not going to make up for that curriculum that you have to pay for and have in person, but all right.
And when I would like to just clarify too that when I say other libraries, I mean outside of the FVRL district, yeah. Just in case somebody's thinking, you can still request from our branches within the district.
Sure. We're happy to send things from Goldendale to Battleground, but unfortunately we just can't get it from Pullman or New York or anybody outside of us. All right, so I think, do I have one think we might have even kind of talked about this, but one thing that we've been talking about is online versus pre-recorded. I'm not sure if you guys have a preference for programming when it comes to kids. You might also just be like, no screens, please. That's another, I think the last question we have that we were trying to get a little bit of feedback on, but I will say, Alicia, we have one kids book group right now. We're working on some others. There's some logistical pieces. We hadn't expected those hiccups, but it is actually a live group and it meets every Wednesday, I believe, at 3 p.m. It's the Read Aloud crowd. And so it's for school age. They are currently working through a chapter book and then they discuss it as they read it each week. And that is linked on our virtual calendar, but we are working for some additional one. Oh, for tweens. That's good to know, Diane. Did I miss? I probably missed that.
Somebody said that they appreciate the live option and the option to watch it at different times when recorded. So
okay, cool. Awesome. All right. Well, I think that, yeah, that's the last of that. Elementary, Alicia, that's the one that we have the read aloud crowd for right now. That one is for, I believe, 8 to 12-year-olds, I think is the range on that. So it's kind of upper elementary and early middle school. Our goal is to have some additional ones up. I can tell you there are just some logistical things that go along with that. Traditionally, our kids' book groups, we give the books away. And that's been an oddly difficult hurdle to get over right now, just because we want to make sure that kids have the book to read. And we don't have book club kits for that age range the same way we do for our adults right now. But it is on our agenda, and that's also something we can talk about with our virtual programming group now that we've gotten some patron feedback to really help push that forward a little bit more as well. Awesome. Well, I really appreciate your guys' joining us tonight and your feedback. I do want to let you know I took notes on everything, and it's my my sincere goal is to gather all of this and really share with the groups. We have work groups working on just about everything right now, since we know this is changing how everybody uses the library, both you guys and us who work there. So thank you guys so much for joining us. I will hopefully get you out an email. I will get you out an email, I should say, in the next couple minutes that has the resource handout and the survey, and I'll try and highlight those things that I know we have that got asked specifically. And then if we do have follow-up on any of these specific items afterwards, I will go ahead and share that with you at another date. And if, again, you decide that you want to have a burning desire to watch this again, you'll find it on our YouTube channel probably in the next couple of days. So I hope you guys all have a fantastic evening, and we will hopefully see you at another program. So.